The woman in Walmart seemed ordinary at first, mid-30s, friendly, curious. But every aisle I turned down, she was there, smiling, watching, asking questions that went too deep. At first, it was harmless. Then it wasn't. When she offered to help me home and said her husband was waiting outside in a yellow truck, something cold settled in my chest. That was the moment I knew. If I went with her, no one would ever see me again. If you love true horror stories told in the dark, hit subscribe and don't forget to leave the light on tonight. It was late, a humid Florida night in the summer of 2001, the kind where the air feels heavy, and even the lights inside Walmart seemed to hum with exhaustion. I was 9 months pregnant, tired, swollen, and just wanted to grab a few last-minute things before the baby came. I remember the automatic doors sliding open, that blast of cold air against my face, and the faint smell of rubber and cleaning supplies drifting through the aisles. The store was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you aware of every squeak of the shopping cart wheels. There were only a few people scattered around. A man by the electronics, an older woman near the checkouts, and someone in a red vest restocking shelves in the distance. It should have felt safe. It didn't. At first, I didn't notice her. She was just another shopper, mid-30s maybe, her hair tied back, wearing a pale blue shirt and jeans. Nothing about her stood out, and maybe that was the most dangerous part. I saw her again in the kitchen aisle, then in the cleaning supplies, then again when I reached the baby section. Every time I looked up, she was there, same smile, same distance, like she was timing her movements with mine. At first, I thought I was imagining it, hormones, exhaustion, maybe paranoia. But as I stopped to look at baby clothes, I realized she was standing a few feet away, pretending to browse, yet her eyes never left me. Then she spoke. Boy or girl? She asked, and her voice was soft, too soft, like she'd been waiting to use it. I smiled politely, because that's what you do when you're raised to be kind, when you're taught not to make a scene. Boy, I said. Any day now. Her smile widened. Oh, how exciting, she said. Is your husband with you? That question, it caught me off guard. It wasn't a normal question, not the kind you ask a stranger in a store. I hesitated, then answered quietly, he's at home. She tilted her head slightly, studying me like she was memorizing something. You sound like you're not from around here, she said. I laughed awkwardly, told her we'd just moved from Michigan, that my husband and I were stationed here for work. She stepped closer, too close, and said, "Do you have any family nearby?" Her tone was still sweet, but there was something new beneath it. Curiosity sharpened into intent. The air between us felt heavier then, and I could feel my heartbeat thudding in my chest. I tried to turn away, picking up a small onesie from the shelf, pretending to compare sizes. She didn't move. When I finally looked back, she was still watching me. The same smile stretched thin across her face, eyes wide, unblinking. You know, she said softly, my husband and I, we love helping young families. He's waiting outside. We have a big truck. We could drive you home, help you unload everything. For a moment, I just stood there. I didn't understand what she was suggesting, not fully, but something in my body, some old, buried instinct, screamed at me to get away. I forced a polite smile, said thank you, that I was fine, that my husband was waiting for me. Her smile faltered for the first time. You sure? She asked, her voice lower now, just a fraction colder. We could even buy you something. Something big, a crib maybe. I shook my head, gripping the handle of my cart so tightly my fingers hurt. I'm good, I said again, a little louder this time. Something changed in her expression then. The sweetness vanished, and what replaced it was hollow. She turned away, but didn't leave. She followed me again, 2 aisles down, then 3. Every time I thought I'd lost her, I'd catch her reflection in the shiny floor or in the edge of a display mirror, a shape that moved when I moved. I started to feel dizzy. The air felt thicker now, like the store itself was holding its breath. I pushed my cart faster, heading toward the checkout lanes. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder overhead, the hum echoing in my ears. As I passed the last aisle, I looked back, and there she was, standing perfectly still between the rows of clothes, watching. She didn't look away, not even when I turned the corner, just that same faint smile and eyes that followed me all the way to the registers. When the cashier started scanning my items, I could still feel her presence, like static crawling up my neck. The cashier said something, I don't remember what, but I nodded automatically. My mind locked on the end of the aisle behind me. When I glanced back again, she was gone. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined everything, that maybe it was just nerves, a tired brain making monsters out of strangers. But as I rolled my cart toward the doors, I caught a glimpse through the glass, a flash of yellow paint, a boxy silhouette. Idling near the curb. A man was sitting behind the wheel, and she was standing beside it, just watching me. And that's when I realized the real story wasn't inside the store at all. It was waiting outside. The rain had started to fall harder as I pushed my cart through the Walmart doors, each drop hissing against the heated pavement, turning the parking lot into a mirror of neon and streetlights. I tried to shake the image of her face from my mind. The way her smile had lingered just a second too long. The way her eyes had watched me as though she were measuring every step I took. It was unnerving, and yet, in the chaos of the store and the late hour, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe she was just friendly. But that rational thought dissolved the moment I saw the yellow truck again. It sat at the edge of the lot, the kind of vehicle that shouldn't exist quietly, like it had no business being there, and yet it waited. Inside, shadows shifted, and I caught a glimpse of the man she had mentioned, leaning back in the driver's seat, watching, silent, like he had been waiting for me all along. I froze. For a second, my body refused to move, heart hammering, palms slick against the shopping cart handle. Something primal stirred in me, an instinct older than logic, and it screamed, "Do not go near that truck." I remembered the woman's smile, too wide, too sweet, her hand gesturing vaguely toward the exit, her words lingering in the air. "We could drive you home. We could help you." Every syllable had been loaded with a weight that only now I fully understood. I turned away, walking briskly toward my car, but I could feel her gaze on me even then, trailing me through the rain, through the puddles. A shadow stretched unnaturally long under the streetlights. The thing about a smile that stays too long is that it doesn't just sit on the lips, it spreads into the eyes, the posture, the way the shoulders hold themselves, until every instinct you have tells you there is nothing human behind it. That's what made her so terrifying. Not the words, not even the truck, but that smile that didn't fade, that lingered in your memory like a shadow you couldn't outrun. I reached my car and fumbled with the keys, my fingers trembling as they struggled to unlock the door. Rain plastered my hair to my forehead, cold seeping through the thin jacket I had thrown on over my hospital dress, and then I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. She was there again, standing beside the truck, hands clasped in front of her, smile perfectly intact, as if nothing, no distance, no time, no sense of fear could touch it. I shivered and climbed into my car, doors locking with a click that sounded impossibly small, against the pounding of my own heart. Her eyes met mine through the windshield, and for a moment, I could swear she winked. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't casual. It was a signal. The man inside the truck leaned slightly forward, but he remained mostly in shadow, his face unreadable, the engine's idle humming like a heartbeat in the wet night. I forced the engine to turn over, wheels spinning slightly as the rain made the asphalt slick, and I backed out slowly, trying not to look at the truck, trying not to confirm that it might follow. And then, in that small, cold space between panic and logic, I understood something essential. This was no accident. No chance encounter in Walmart. No random curiosity. They had chosen me. The realization sat like ice in my stomach. Every polite refusal, every "thank you, we're fine," had been noted, stored, processed. The truck outside, the smile that lingered too long, they were part of a plan. And I was at the center of it. I pressed my foot harder on the pedal, rain blurring the edges of streetlights, as if the world itself wanted to hide me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The yellow truck wasn't moving yet, just waiting, watching, for the first time in years. I understood the pure terror of being seen by someone who doesn't just notice you, but studies you. Someone who can smile while planning something that will make your life vanish completely. My fingers clenched the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. And I whispered to myself, do not go with them. Do not go with them. The sound of that mantra filled the car, a small comfort in a night that had turned impossibly large, and I realized the night was far from over. The aisles of Walmart were behind me, but the memory of her smile, the one that had lasted too long, was already following. The streets were slick with rain, streetlights smeared into glowing puddles, and every passing car reflected in 1,000 fractured pieces on the asphalt. I kept my eyes forward, hands tight on the wheel. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the world had grown smaller around me, that every shadow held her, waiting. It started with small things, the way the stranger had asked about my husband, the casual mention of her husband waiting outside, the way she lingered a second too long in each aisle, like she was measuring how far she could follow without being noticed. I had tried to dismiss it, friendly, curious, perhaps lonely, but now, in the dark silence of my car, her questions replayed in my mind. Do you have any family nearby? Is your husband with you? Are you new to this town? Each one seemed innocent on its own, and yet together, they were not small talk. They were a net being woven around me, thread by thread, tightening without warning. I remembered how I had smiled politely, how I had nodded, given short answers, and how every polite refusal had only made her tilt her head, study me more closely, like a predator learning the contours of its prey. The first instinct is to rationalize, to tell yourself it's nothing, that humans are curious creatures, that maybe she simply meant well. But instinct doesn't lie, and mine had screamed from the moment I had stepped into that aisle. I remembered the pause in her smile, the cold edge that had flashed when I declined her offer to drive me home, the way her eyes didn't soften, didn't fade, didn't turn human again. Even now, hours later, I could see her in the corner of my vision, smile stretching too wide, waiting for the right moment. The questions weren't questions at all. They were tests. Measures of my vulnerability, of my trust, of the distance I had placed between myself and anyone who could see me. I recalled her hand gestures, the subtle invitation toward the exit, the way she spoke of her husband, her words layered with a sweetness that hit a sharp, precise edge. I had been 9 months pregnant, exhausted, anxious, trusting the world to function with reason, and that made me the perfect target. Perfect because I wasn't looking for danger. Perfect, because I didn't see her for what she was until it was almost too late. I kept telling myself, it's just a person, just someone weird, just a coincidence. But the yellow truck outside Walmart told me otherwise, and the cold weight in my chest whispered that there was a plan in motion, and that plan had my name written across it. The questions had a rhythm, a purpose, like a map being drawn silently, directions leading someone to exactly where I would be most vulnerable. The aisles, the baby section, the fleeting moments when I looked up, all carefully observed, recorded, memorized. I thought of her leaning closer when she asked about my family, the tilt of her head, the studying, the soft yet deliberate tone, and I knew then, whatever game this was, I was not meant to win. The streets stretched before me, rain beating in steady rhythms against the windshield. And yet I felt the net tightening behind, in the form of that smile, the truck, and a presence I couldn't name but could not ignore. I glanced in the rearview mirror again, the yellow truck still there, engine idling, shadows shifting, man and woman both motionless, watching me leave the lot as if the distance mattered nothing. Panic made my fingers clench the wheel tighter, muscles in my shoulders coiling, every instinct screaming drive faster, don't look back. And yet I knew, even as I obeyed that instinct, that I had already answered her questions in the aisles of Walmart, that every nod, every polite smile, every brief sentence had been logged, cataloged, and that whatever came next would not be random. It would be precise. The night was far from over, and the questions weren't finished, because the kind of people who ask questions like that, the kind whose smiles linger too long, they don't just want answers, they want control. They want to see what happens when someone thinks they are safe, and I realized, in that slow, rising dread, I was not safe, not anywhere. Not until I understood exactly what they wanted and how far they were willing to go to get it. The rain had slowed to a fine drizzle by the time I reached my car, but the air still felt heavy, thick with a tension that pressed against my chest, making each breath shallow, urgent. I fumbled with my keys, hands trembling, wet from the rain. And when the door finally clicked open, I dove inside, locking it behind me with a force that made the metal snap. And then I saw it again. The yellow truck, parked at the edge of the lot, a hulking silhouette under the weak glow of a flickering streetlight. Its paint was chipped, the edges of the body dented, and the windshield reflected the rain in long, streaking lines, making it look almost like a mirror, a distorted twin of the world I thought I knew. Inside, the shadows shifted. I caught a glimpse of the man, head tilted slightly, eyes hidden behind darkness, and the woman, standing next to the driver's door, smile perfect, poised, unblinking. The way she stood, waiting, should have been impossible to ignore, but at the same time, there was something almost hypnotic about her presence, like a photograph of someone you've never met, and yet somehow, impossibly, can't forget. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, and tried to convince myself it was coincidence, that they weren't following me, that my imagination, exhausted by pregnancy, worry, and long hours, was turning shadows into something malignant. But instinct does not lie. I could feel the weight of those eyes, even through glass, even through distance, like invisible threads reaching for me, pulling, measuring, testing the strength of my resolve. I started the engine. The hum filled the car, a small comfort, a shield against the presence waiting outside. And then, almost imperceptibly, the truck moved, not quickly, not like a chase, but slow, deliberate, following at a distance that was too close for comfort, yet just far enough that I could not be certain if it was real. I checked my mirrors, empty streets, reflections blurred by rain, but the yellow box truck stayed there, following my every turn, engine idling silently, waiting. I could feel the hair on my arms standing up, the kind of primal fear that makes every nerve ache, every muscle tighten, and every thought focus on one simple goal: survive. I thought about the aisles of Walmart, how she had smiled at me, asked her questions, offered her help, and how each word had been a step in this plan I had barely begun to understand. I remembered the way her eyes had locked on mine, unblinking, assessing, and how, in that moment, I had known whatever she wanted, whatever they had planned, it would not stop until I either complied or vanished. The street stretched before me, neon signs reflected in the puddles, headlights passing silently in both directions. And I felt the tension of being hunted in every drop of rain. I tried to think logically. If I went home, they would know my address. If I went to the police now, I had no proof, just a story that sounded like the ramblings of an exhausted, pregnant woman. And yet, the yellow truck outside Walmart wasn't a story. It was real, and it was waiting. I pressed down on the accelerator, rain splattering against the hood, wipers struggling to keep pace, and the truck mirrored me, turn for turn, distance shrinking imperceptibly, until my pulse matched the rhythm of the windshield wipers. And then I understood, fully, the reason she had smiled that long, lingering smile: to measure, to test, to see if fear alone could bend me into compliance. But I would not bend. Not yet. I glanced back through the rearview mirror again. The truck loomed there, silent, patient, yellow headlights gleaming faintly through the mist, and I felt a chill crawl through my bones. For the first time that night, I realized how thin the line between normal and nightmare really was. A few questions in a Walmart aisle, a polite refusal, a glance at the wrong place at the wrong time, and suddenly, everything familiar had become foreign. Everything safe had become a trap. I took a deep breath, hands gripping the wheel tighter, and whispered to myself, do not look back. Do not stop. Keep moving. The yellow truck outside Walmart was more than a vehicle. It was a warning. A shadow made flesh. A promise that some smiles were meant to follow you, long after the aisles were empty, long after the doors closed, long after the rain stopped. The road stretched out before me, wet and dark, reflecting the streetlights like a river of fractured glass. Every instinct screamed, every nerve coiled like a spring ready to snap. And my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly I could feel my bones in my palms. I didn't dare look back, not directly, not fully, but through the corner of my eye. The yellow truck moved with me, gliding along the rain-slick streets, a predator that never rushed, never paused, just followed, patient, inevitable, waiting for a mistake. My heart hammered in my chest, pregnancy making every movement slow, heavy, cumbersome, and yet my mind raced, calculating turns, exits, even the tiniest gaps in the streetlights. Instinct, pure, unfiltered instinct, had taken over. Forget politeness, forget reasoning, forget the world I had known. It was now survival, raw, urgent, and merciless. I swerved slightly, tires skimming puddles, as if the slightest movement could shake them. But the truck mirrored me, distance closing ever so slightly, and I realized then they weren't just outside Walmart. They had been outside my life all along, and now they were proving it. I remembered the smile again. Too wide, too calm, too long. Every polite question in the aisles, every seemingly benign glance. A careful mapping of my habits, my reactions, my fear, and now I could see the purpose. The truck's headlights glimmered faintly in the rear view, yellow paint muted under the wet night, and I felt the weight of its presence like a hand on my shoulder. No words, No warning, just patient pursuit. I took a sharp right, then another left, hoping to confuse them, hoping to create distance. My tires screamed against the wet asphalt, splattering water across the windshield, wipers fighting to keep pace with the chaos. The city streets blurred past in streaks of neon and reflection, every puddle a mirror showing the yellow shadow chasing me, every stoplight a trap, every pedestrian a potential witness that could vanish in seconds. And then I heard it, a subtle shift in. The hum behind me, tires rolling over wet leaves, the faint scrape of metal, and my pulse spiked. Instinct screamed louder. Do not slow down. Do not let them catch you. Every muscle in my body tensed. Even the baby inside me seemed to respond, kicking with a rhythm I hadn't felt all night, an echo of fear or warning or both. I took the next turn too fast, nearly clipping the curb, and for a second, I thought I had lost them. Relief washed over me, brief and fragile. But then I saw the glint of yellow paint. In the distance, the unmistakable shape of the truck, and panic slammed into me like icy water. I drove faster, hands shaking, wheels aquaplaning slightly over the slick roads, and I realized the truth. This wasn't just a chase. This was a test. Every maneuver, every turn was being studied, recorded, remembered. I thought of the aisles of Walmart again, how small and helpless I had felt, how the polite smile, the questions, the offer of help had all been bait. My heart pounded. Every instinct in my body screamed, and still, the truck followed, silent, patient, its lights a dim, looming reminder of the danger I could not outrun. And then it hit me. This was no longer about distance or speed or clever turns. It was about staying awake, staying aware, staying alive, because in the dark, in the quiet hum of the night, one wrong move, one lapse in instinct, and they would take everything. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I drove. I turned. I raced the night with only one thought: survive. And I knew, deep down, that instinct alone would not be enough. The night had only begun. The yellow truck was patient, and so were they. The city lights blurred past, wet streets reflecting neon like fractured glass, and yet, in the corner of my vision, I felt it. The shadow. It wasn't just the yellow truck now. It wasn't just the woman's smile or the man's silent presence. It was something smaller, slower, slipping into every dark corner of the streets I drove. A lingering sensation that I was being watched. Even when I thought I was alone. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, fingernails digging into leather, and tried to tell myself it was nothing, just exhaustion, paranoia, the night pressing down too hard on my nerves. But instinct did not lie, and it screamed again. They're closer than you think. Always closer. The shadow moved in subtle ways, in the reflection of a shop window, in the shape of a street lamp stretching across the road, in the spaces where headlights didn't reach. Every turn, every twist of the street, I could feel it following. A silent echo of the yellow truck, a presence that didn't obey the rules of normal movement. My mind raced. Was it them? Or something else entirely? The night had grown thicker around me, each sound amplified: the hiss of rain, the squeak of tires on wet asphalt, the faint hum of the truck's engine in the distance. And then I saw it clearly, for a heartbeat, in the reflection of my rearview mirror. A figure moving alongside me on the sidewalk, though there should have been no one there. Tall, still, almost merging with the shadows, a black coat that fluttered in the wind, and the unmistakable sense that it was waiting. I swallowed hard, hands trembling, and pressed the accelerator further, wheels spinning on puddles, rain hissing against the windshield. The shadow didn't RUN. It didn't chase. It just followed. keeping pace. A silent reminder that it was not bound by rules, not bound by distance, not bound by reason. I tried to focus on the road ahead, on the turns I could take, on the houses I passed, on anything that might give me a sense of safety. But the shadow always lingered in the periphery, in reflections in the small, cold spaces where logic could not reach. And then I remembered the aisles of Walmart, the polite questions, the too long smile, the way they had learned my patterns, how they had known exactly how I would respond. The shadow wasn't just following me in the street. It had been following me all along, even before the yellow truck had appeared, even before I understood the danger. I had been watched. My chest tightened, heartbeat echoing like a drum in the confined space of the car. I wanted to cry, to scream, to make some noise that might pierce the silence. But the shadow thrived on silence. It fed on my fear, on my awareness of its presence, and every moment I acknowledged it, it grew stronger, closer. I glanced at the side mirror. Nothing. I glanced at the rear view, empty streets. But I knew the shadow was there, just outside of reason, just outside of perception, a predator patient and unyielding. I drove faster, rain blurring the world, fog curling along the edges of the streets. And the shadow kept pace. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a person, maybe it was a trick of the light, but instinct would not let me lie to myself. Somewhere deep inside, I realized the truth. They were not merely hunting me, they were shaping me, testing the limits of my fear, measuring how far they could push me before instinct alone failed. And then it shifted. A sudden movement in the reflection, a pause, a tilt, and for a brief moment, I felt the same cold weight I had felt in Walmart, the weight of the too long smile, the same intent, the same patience. The shadow had found me, and it was not alone. The rain had slowed to a mist, the city breathing shallow under the pale glow of streetlights, and my hands shook so badly I could barely hold the phone steady. There was only one thought in my mind: call someone. Anyone. I didn't care who picked up. I just needed another human voice, something to remind me that I wasn't trapped alone in whatever nightmare this had become. The first number I dialed was my sister's. It rang twice, 3 times, then clicked. A hollow silence, followed by faint static, like someone exhaling directly into the receiver. I froze. Hello. No answer, just a faint hum, a soft crackle like distant rain on glass. Then, faintly, a whisper. Not words, just breathing. Someone was listening. I hung up fast, heart pounding, screen slick with rain and sweat. My second call. 911. This time the line connected instantly, but what came through wasn't a dispatcher's voice. It was a recording, my own voice, speaking words I hadn't said yet. They're still outside. Please hurry. Please. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor of the car, screen flickering between call logs and static. Somehow, the line was open again. Through the speaker, a low hum began to build, and underneath it, a woman's voice, calm, warm, familiar. You shouldn't have left the store. It was her, the woman from Walmart. Her tone hadn't changed, still polite, still friendly, but now hollow, like a voice pulled through broken glass. I grabbed the phone with shaking hands, screaming into the receiver, "What do you want from me?" Her answer was soft, "We just want to help you get home." The call ended. Silence filled the car, only my ragged breathing, the ticking of the engine cooling under the drizzle. I stared at the screen. No call history. No number dialed. As if the phone had erased its own memory. The air inside the car felt heavy, too heavy, like someone else was breathing beside me. I turned, slowly, afraid of what I might see. The seat beside me was empty. but pressed into the condensation on the passenger window was the faint outline of a handprint. Not mine. Still wet. Still fresh. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but something, curiosity, fear, instinct, made me do it anyway. You shouldn't drive in this weather, the voice said. This time it wasn't the woman. It was the man, deep, measured. The same one who had sat silent in the truck. We can see you. Just stop the car. We'll take care of you. I looked up, heart hammering, and through the rain-blurred windshield, headlights appeared behind me. Yellow. Too bright. Too close. I dropped the phone, slammed the gear into drive, and the car screamed forward down the slick, narrow road. The headlights followed, steady, patient. Never swerving, never fading. I tried to call again, any number, any contact, but each time, the line filled with the same static hiss, followed by faint murmurs of my own voice. Words I hadn't yet spoken. I wasn't calling. Out. Someone was calling through. The roads twisted, streetlights giving way to darkness, and somewhere deep in the static, I could still hear the woman's voice. You're almost home now. But I didn't know what home meant anymore. My apartment, my car, the nightmare itself. The phone vibrated one last time, screen lighting up with a single word, welcome. Then it went dark. The headlights behind me grew brighter, blinding. And in the glow reflected off the rearview mirror, I saw not one face, but three. The woman, the man, and something else, a shape without eyes, leaning forward in the back seat of the truck, smiling without a mouth. The streets finally opened into familiar neighborhoods, rows of suburban houses standing silent under the drizzle, lamps glowing weakly through the mist, and for a moment, I allowed myself a single, shaky breath. I reached my apartment complex, wheels crunching on wet gravel, and parked in front of my unit. The door was ajar. My heart skipped a beat. Every instinct screamed danger, and yet I forced myself out of the car, hands trembling, keys clutched like a weapon, and stepped inside. The living room was in disarray. Drawers pulled open, papers scattered across the floor, and the faint, metallic scent of something wet lingered in the air. I thought I was alone, and yet the weight of their presence pressed in from the shadows. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911. But the line was dead. Static hissed, then silence. It didn't matter. I had to get out, and I had to get help in person. I drove to the nearest station, rain still dripping from my hair, my car shaking in my grip as every red light felt like a countdown. Inside the police station, the fluorescent lights buzzed, clerks typing behind glass partitions, and the faint smell of coffee mixed with bleach and paper. I approached the front desk, words spilling out in fragments. Please, someone, following. Walmart, yellow truck. The officer behind the counter, mid-40s, with tired eyes, nodded slowly. He asked the usual questions. Your name? Your address? Where did this happen? I told him everything, every aisle, every smile, every question, and the way the yellow truck had waited outside. He typed, nodded, asked if I wanted to file a report. Yes, I said, voice trembling, please. File a report. But the clerk's eyes lingered on me a moment longer than necessary, a subtle doubt in their gaze. You're safe now, he said, right? I nodded, though my chest still felt tight, the memory of headlights and shadows and two long smiles hanging heavy like a storm cloud I could not shake. The officer wrote down my statement, asking for details about the truck, the people, and I told him everything. The woman's polite questions, the man's silent watch, the phone calls, the shadows. He jotted notes, eyes flicking between the typed lines and my face, then nodded, as if filing this report made it real. but only on paper. Did anyone else see this? He asked, and I shook my head. No witnesses. No one else had noticed the small, subtle things, the way they moved, the way the truck followed, the unnatural patience. He stamped the report, gave me a copy, and said, "If anything happens, call us immediately." I wanted to say, "You don't understand. They aren't normal. They don't follow rules. They're still out there," but the words wouldn't come. I left the station, walking into the misty night, rain dripping down my jacket, and felt the weight of that yellow truck, that shadow, even in the safety of the city lights. The report didn't change anything. It was a piece of paper, a bureaucratic shield against a threat that didn't obey logic, and even as I went home, I could feel their presence lingering in reflections in mirrors, in the spaces between streetlights. By the time I returned to my apartment, doors locked, windows latched, I realized something crucial. Filing a police report did not make them disappear. It did not erase the way they had mapped me, the way the woman's smile had lingered, or how the truck had followed me through rain and darkened streets. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands gripping my knees, and for the first time, I admitted it silently to myself. This was far from over. The police had a report. I had witnesses in the form of officers' nods and typed notes, but the threat was still real, still present, still patient, and I knew then, as I traced the edges of my apartment with cautious eyes, that no amount of paperwork, no number of phone calls, no promises from uniformed strangers would stop what was coming. Because they were waiting, always waiting, and some shadows, some smiles, and some yellow trucks do not vanish with reports or explanations. They follow, always. The police report should have been the end. It should have been enough to warn someone, to make them look twice at a yellow truck parked too long outside a store. But it wasn't. Weeks passed, and the story slipped quietly through the cracks of paperwork and routine. The calls stopped, the nights grew quieter, and for a brief moment, I began to believe I had imagined everything until the news broke. It was a humid afternoon, mid-August, when the anchor's voice cut through the static of the TV. Authorities have located a vehicle matching the description of a yellow delivery truck, abandoned off Route 90 in a wooded area outside town. My stomach dropped. I turned up the volume, hands shaking as the screen flickered to the image, a familiar yellow truck, partially buried in overgrowth, its paint faded and streaked with mud. The camera panned slowly across the open rear doors and inside. You could see shapes covered in old, stained tarps. The reporter's voice grew hushed. Officials confirmed that human remains were discovered inside the vehicle. Authorities believe it may be linked to a string of disappearances dating back nearly a decade. I remember sinking onto the couch, unable to breathe. The room spun. It felt like the world had tilted slightly, and I was sliding towards something dark. They showed photographs of the victims, men and women, some young, some older, each with a missing persons report filed months or years apart. One by one, their faces appeared, familiar, unfamiliar, all of them lost. And then, the next day, the police knocked on my door. Two detectives stood there, one tall, with a beard and a notepad in hand, the other younger, nervous, eyes darting to every sound. They asked if I'd filed a report about a yellow truck, about a woman and a man. I nodded, feeling my throat tighten. The older detective sighed, then glanced down at his notes. "We found the vehicle," he said quietly. "Just like you described. It was registered under a different name, but the plate number was altered. Whoever they were, they'd been using that truck for a long time." He hesitated, then added, There were traces of chloroform, hand restraints, and something else. Belongings. Personal items. I swallowed hard. What kind of belongings? He looked at me carefully, as though measuring how much truth I could stand. Driver's licenses, jewelry, photographs, things taken from victims, things meant to be kept. I felt sick. The younger detective looked away, and I could tell they'd seen something worse than what they were saying. The older one continued, "There was something else too, something that matches your statement." He reached into his folder, pulled out a clear plastic bag. Inside it was a receipt, Walmart logo, faint and wrinkled, date smeared by moisture. But the timestamp read exactly the night I'd been there. The items listed were simple: baby wipes, a small blanket, a pack of diapers.my items. But beneath them, another line: cash purchase, pacifier, bottle, baby shoes. The woman had bought the same things I did, the exact same ones. I stared at the plastic bag, my reflection warped in its surface, and whispered, "She was copying me." The detective nodded grimly. "We think she was targeting mothers, especially those alone. It was a pattern." He didn't have to explain what that meant. The truck, the questions, the offer to help, they were all part of something older, darker, practiced. Before they left, the older detective said something that still echoes in my mind. "If you hadn't trusted your instinct that night, you'd be one of them." When they were gone, I sat on the floor, the plastic bag still in my lap, and for a long time I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think beyond that single image, a yellow truck in the woods, and the woman's voice, sweet and calm, saying, "We love helping young families." The news ran the story for a few days. Then it faded. No arrests were made. No one claimed the bodies. No one could prove who they were. The truck was impounded, the evidence sealed, and somewhere behind closed doors, the case became another file in another drawer. But late at night, when the wind hits the windows just right, I still hear the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the creak of cartwheels on tile, and a soft voice behind me asking, "Boy or girl?" Because some stories don't end with justice. They end with survival and the quiet knowledge that evil doesn't always vanish when the lights turn on. It just waits for someone else to smile back. Years have passed since that night, since Walmart, since the yellow truck, and yet the memory hasn't faded. It isn't something I left behind. It followed me, like a shadow stitched to my back, like cold air I can't shake. I moved houses, changed cities, even changed phone numbers. I tried to bury the story in paperwork, in police reports, in therapy sessions, but it doesn't matter. The questions, the smile, the truck, they aren't confined to a single place. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I feel the presence again. Small, deliberate, patient. A shadow in the corner of my vision. A whisper behind me when I pass a glass storefront. A familiar hum, like the fluorescent lights in Walmart buzzing just out of sync with the world. I can still hear her voice, soft, polite, testing, probing. "Do you have any family nearby? Is your husband with you? Boy or girl?" Even now, years later, it takes a moment to remember the answer I gave. Boy, any day now. And the memory of that night replays in vivid, relentless detail. The aisles, the flickering lights, the too long smile, the truck waiting outside, the man sitting silently behind the wheel, all of it etched into my instincts, into my reflexes, into the way my body reacts when I sense danger. The police found the truck eventually, the bodies inside, the receipts. Everything that proved the nightmare had been real. But proof doesn't erase fear. Proof doesn't make the shadow vanish. Proof doesn't stop the way your heartbeat flinches at the sound of a truck door slamming or a pair of footsteps following too closely behind you. I carry it with me in the way I park my car, the way I check the aisles in stores, the way I answer the phone. Even my dreams are colored by it. Corridors of fluorescent light stretching into infinity. A faint yellow glow always lingering at the edges. I have learned to live with it. Survive.to. Trust my instincts more than my eyes, but it is always there, patient, watching, the things that shouldn't exist still tracing my steps, still asking questions that are never small talk. I still see them sometimes in reflections, in the rearview mirror when I think no one is behind me, in shadows where the streetlight shouldn't reach. The woman, her smile stretched perfectly across her face, and the truck, yellow and patient, waiting for someone else to slip. It has taught me many things. Fear is useful. Instinct is precious, and some evil is not bound by distance or time or reason. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the hum of fluorescent lights, and for just a heartbeat, I feel 9 months pregnant again, alone in the aisles of Walmart, with someone watching me. And I know, with a cold certainty, that some things never leave, some smiles never fade, some trucks never stop waiting. I leave the lights on, always. I double-check the locks. I glance at every reflection. I do not ignore questions from strangers, because I know what happens when you do, and I will never, ever forget.